am a director of films that have a lot of action in them. My background was stunt work. I did about 20 years of stunts on some big movies. I was very lucky to be born into a family of successful stunt coordinators and stuntmen, and so I was able to apprentice within my own family and learn the ropes, so to speak. And they were very hard taskmasters and made us work doubly hard to get any kind of recognition. But it was still easier than the average person because we had the initial contact. But what it allowed me to do was watch how a lot of great directors worked, and it was probably one of the most incredible apprenticeships imaginable. And I knew from an early age it was the directing I wanted to do, not the stunt work, even though that was exciting and fun for a young man. And so I learned fairly early on that the best way to do that was to write a script that would get people excited. So I wrote until finally someone read it and they liked it and they said, we'll back this, but we're not sure if you can work with actors and we're not sure if you can do dialogue. But the thing about being a stunt coordinator is that your entire life revolves around calming actors down and making them feel safe and making them feel invulnerable in a very nerve-wracking situation. And so in actual fact, I think that if you're a good stunt coordinator, you're probably as well prepared to work with actors as anyone. Now, does that make you a good director? Does that make every film that a stuntman directs a successful film? Of course not, because they still have to be well chosen, they still have to have taste, they still have to have all of the prerequisite sort of parts that make great entertainment and make a great story. But I've been learning. I've been very lucky in my career that I keep working, and I've been able to direct a lot of movies at this point that have made a lot of people a lot of money, and each one, in my mind, slowly raising in budget, but also raising in quality and standards, storytelling, and narrative, and also the quality of cast that I've been able to work with. Right now I'm at the zenith of all of my pictures with this one. We have more budget and a bigger cast and longer shooting schedule and all those kind of wonderful things I dreamt about when I was first starting. So I feel very lucky. I can't state how much luck is a big factor in this industry. But you also prepare and you also you do everything you can to make these films good. For me, it's really about hard graft, working like crazy. You have your script and you work at your script and you work at your script, you work your script until the night before, just double checking, making sure it's good. What I've started to do lately is I send my script to friends of mine who are writers, and I have writers read it. I have them give me information, friends. Sometimes I have to pay them or give them the credit, but the more people it goes through, the more the good stuff is reinforced and the bad stuff is pointed out. And if you get 3 different people say, yeah, the film's good, but this one scene really sucks, by the third person saying that, you may want to trust your instincts, and vice versa. They say, the ending's fantastic, and you realise you've got something good there. Don't mess with it too much. And then when you get ready to shoot, it's about shot listing, and that means finding the location, knowing who your actors are, how much money you have, in terms of extras and production design, and then designing the day's shooting. It usually starts very ambitiously with a ton of setups and camera cranes and dollies, and then as reality sets in, it becomes a little more minimal until you understand what you can actually get in 12 hours of work, and whether that crew is, how fast they move, what they're up to technically, how experienced they are, if they speak the same language as you, how many cameras you're shooting with, and then you try and figure into sort of an insurance policy in case disaster happens, like it starts raining or or one of the cameras breaks or someone's late for work. It's directing is about the pragmatic and the artistic, which borders on the surreal and the sort of the unknown. So it's a beautiful career to have. I think I'm one of it's just the most wonderful thing to do. You're creating a form. You are a form of of magician, of what you're doing. John and I have had long conversations on this one. Anyone can direct an action movie, and you make a bad B movie, and there's thousands of them out there, and they do nothing for their directors, they do nothing for their cast, they are rudimentary, they are heartless, soulless pieces of work that go straight to DVD, and you see them stacked up in your DVD store, you see them on late night television, and there's thousands of them, and what you must do, you must absolutely do is self-impose a sense of discipline and you know, the sword of Damocles hanging over your head should you do wrong, should you ever let up, and just force yourself to make that extra effort to get something good out of it, you know. A better story, a better performance, something that transcends the mediocre and becomes the sublime, you know. There's a grace at the core of every movie, meaning the poetic, and it's trying to find that amongst the rubble and the rubbish and the instinctual and you know, what's easy to do, and you know, where the camera lands, and let's just shoot it from here, and why don't we shoot the whole thing with one angle and cut it later, and you know, all this, you know, all this kind of sloppiness that is very easy nowadays with a video camera because it's so simple to move around. It's not like, you know, with film you were very concerned because at each foot of film you burned, you were paying for the film developing, the telecine. Now it's almost easy. You know, I feel on some sets I've worked on as a stuntman and stunt coordinator that it's almost easy just to capture what's going on. There's also, in the last 10 years, become a fashion for the sort of shaky cam, slightly documentary approach to things, which is awesome when it's done well, but it's also an excuse for incredibly poor filmmaking, and you must never fall into that. There's still, you know, there are great masters out there who are able to create beautiful frames where you take any frame of that movie and you could frame it and put it on the wall as a piece of art. And I think there needs to be a leaning back to that kind of cinema, you know, the kind of cinema I adored, you know, watch Lawrence of Arabia or Dr. Zhivago or any of the early Spielberg films if you want to go crazy, or Sergio Leone, and you're talking about guys that could frame an image so excitingly, so beautifully. John and I watched a film from the 70s. It was an old Bruce Lee movie, but it was beautiful. It was really well shot in wonderful, wonderful widescreen, and someone had designed each of those shots, and that is something that I feel has fallen by the wayside, and certainly in low-budget action movies. You know, when I say low budget, I mean under 50 million, the kind of pictures that are made outside of the studio zone. These films are very, very sloppy. They're ugly, and I think what we have to do is to strive to be better than those and to make something that is wonderful. You know, there are pictures made in the 50s and 60s, action films like For Whom the Bell Tolls and the Kurosawa pictures, where there were moments in the movie that you wanted to cry because it was so moving, but you're watching an action movie, and that's possible. That's possible to do that. It's possible to touch people with this genre and leave a lasting effect on them. You know, try and make a movie that when the audience gets up and walks out of the theatre, they haven't forgotten it by the time they've left the theatre, you know. And these are the things we strive for as filmmakers, and we must never stop striving for those moments, because otherwise it's a normal job, and who wants a normal job, you know? We have, our obligation is to rise to the top of the barrel and to just make these pictures that affect people, you know. Early on, you know, when I was growing up, people had posters of Commando, they had posters of Bruce Lee, they had posters of Chuck Norris on their wall, and they were hanging on the closet. And I remember going to my friends' houses and I said, I want to make a movie where they hang posters of the lead actor. The kids, 14, 15, 16-year-olds, hang posters of my lead actor on their wall in character. That for me, Mad Max, Mel Gibson, you know that one where he's walking with the dog and the shotgun? It's like, God damn, I want that. I want my movie to have a lead character who's so iconic that 14, 15, 12-year-old boys put that poster up on their wall because it has influenced them so much. It has made such a lasting effect on them. And that's where we want to be, you know. And it's a great story. It's great performances. It's not action for action's sake, but when the action happens, it should be bloody good. But it's the whole package, everything together. And you have to strive for that, you know. Otherwise we're just doing the work, and that's not what it is. I think it should be fun, but there should be a certain self-agonizing in there where we really are questioning ourselves and saying, are we doing this the best way it can be done? And if it is, then, you know, okay, but you know, let's try and do that, you know. So that's directing for me.